You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to N2K Cyberwire's Hacking Humans podcast, where each week we look behind the social engineering scams, phishing schemes, and criminal exploits that are making headlines and taking a heavy toll on organizations around the world. I'm Dave Bittner, and joining me is Joe Kerrigan. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Dave.
And our N2K colleague and host of the T-Minus Space Daily podcast, Maria Vermazis. Maria.
How are you, gentlemen?
Doing well, thank you. We've got some good stories to share this week. Also joining us later in the show is Nati Tal, head of Guardio Labs. We're discussing the growing danger of homograph attacks, and we will be right back after this message from our show sponsor. And now, a few thoughts from our sponsors at ThreatLocker. The tactics used by cyber criminals are becoming more and more advanced every day. The shift from a default allow approach to a default deny is more critical than ever. This is where ThreatLocker comes in. Stay tuned for how ThreatLocker allow listing and ring fencing has your back. All right, we are back, and we have some follow-up here. I'll take this one, Joe. This is from a listener named Robert, who writes in and says, "Greetings from the Great White North," which I assume means Canada.
Canada.
Hi, Canada. Hi, friends.
Robert writes in and says, "I was listening to Joe's comments about credit cards and payments at drive-thrus and restaurants. All I have to say is, when will your country catch up to the rest of the world when it comes to things financial?"
Don't hold your breath.
Robert, I am so with you here. I am so with you. He says, "How long did it take your country to adopt chips in credit and debit cards after the rest of the world adopted them?" Absolutely true.
It was a long time.
He says, "Every drive-thru I use, the machine comes out of the window on the end of a stick. And if we tap either our debit or credit card for the payment, the attendant never gets to touch my card. In restaurants at the end of the meal, the server asks, 'Do you need the machine?' The machine is brought to you at the table. Your card is never taken away."
I've seen this in a number of restaurants, actually, where they have these devices on the table that you, of course, because it's America, why miss the opportunity to sell something? But you can also get this thing to play games for your kid.
Yeah.
For like $1 for the meal.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But these things also are the point of sale system for the restaurant.
Right. Well, and more I see the waiters and waitresses themselves
carrying the thing with them.
Yeah, having the
I've
little
seen that
terminal.
a lot more too.
Right.
I think that's really growing in popularity. I think customers like it. I think it makes everything faster.
It does. I don't have to wait for the waiter to come back with my credit card, which is one of the longest waits in dining out.
But I think especially as folks, when you want individual checks for your meal, that device can just go from one person to the other.
Right.
They don't just,
Oh,
so
yeah,
it's a
that's
lot easier.
true. Yes, splitting the bill is a lot easier, which I know waiters hate. Servers. They hate it. So
Yeah,
that makes it a lot easier. Yeah, I don't the stores have to buy that? Isn't that part of the reason this has taken so long is they have to front that investment?
Yes. Actually, I'll tell you a big driver in the delay for chip and PIN or just using a chip was gas stations. Gas stations had already spent huge amounts of money on infrastructure for pay at the pump, but didn't have a chip in it, so they had to replace all that infrastructure with chip technology.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
And that's one of the big drivers behind the delay.
Yep.
And that's why they decided to put those ads there that blast at us every time we're at the gas station now.
Yeah.
It's great.
Here's pro tip. On the right-hand side, second button down is mute.
Oh, yeah, the worn out button is the one I use.
Right.
Right.
That's how you know.
Robert had some other comments about, I guess I had spoken about carrying cash, and Robert agreed. He says, "I feel better knowing I have a backup plan, and there are times when I don't want my purchase tracked by our financial overlords and I pay in cash." So
I get it.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert, for writing in. We agree that, as usual, being Americans, we think we have it the best when we actually have it the worst. USA. How's your health care up there in Canada? What's it like? All right, so that is our follow-up. Why don't we go into our stories here? Joe, you have the honors this week. You want to start things off?
I do. And yes, the first one I have comes out of Jackson, Tennessee. And these are two stories I have that are about the same thing. And we'll put links to both these stories in the show notes. But the headline of the first story is China's Xi hails Thailand's strong action against scam centers. And what is happening here is President Xi of China and the Thai Prime Minister, her name is, I'm just going to say her last name, Shinawatra. And I don't think I'm butchering that too badly. But Prime Minister Shinawatra has been working at resolving the problem of these scam centers that are happening along the Thailand-Myanmar border.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening? We've talked about this in the past, where people are tricked into coming to Thailand or Myanmar, and when they get there, they're told, "Hey, come in here. We have this great job for you." But once they get there, they're just essentially kidnapped and put to work as slave labor, making outbound calls to their home countries to try to scam their countrymen out of money.
Right.
It's billion-dollar industry. Well, apparently, the Prime Minister of Thailand has shut down a number of these places, and China is saying this is really great because China doesn't want the Chinese people getting scammed. But as the pair met, 61 people rescued from scam centers in Myanmar were returned to Thailand. Defense Secretary, one of their defense secretaries said, the Thailand defense secretary. About 34 of these people were Chinese. The rest of these people come from Indonesia, Ethiopia, and other countries in Africa. So it doesn't matter where you come from. They're probably just going to put you back scamming people in that country. So I would imagine that the Ethiopian people who were kidnapped and abducted and put to work here were probably calling back into Ethiopia, scamming Ethiopians. Because when you do that, you have somebody who speaks the language.
Right.
Right? They know the culture. They get it. So the other story comes from CNN from Katja Olarn. And one of the ways this is going down is that Thailand is cutting power to these scam sites or these locations, these buildings.
Right.
So in power grids, there's no such thing as like a totally localized power grid, especially when you have smaller countries, smaller regions, and things like that. So Thailand apparently controls the electric supply to where these centers are. And as of Wednesday afternoon, at least one of the scam compounds was still operating, but it didn't look like the other ones were still working because Thailand just shut the power off.
Right. They cut off their internet too, I believe.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
That's one way to do it. Yeah.
Here's something that's interesting about about this article is that this article says that these scam factories, many of which are run by Chinese crime syndicates, have proliferated in Myanmar, which is actually in the state of a civil war right now. So it makes sense that you go to a country that has bigger things to worry about and start setting up organized crime operations there.
Yeah.
But what my question about that is, what's China's influence there? Is there anything they can do about these Chinese crime syndicates? Or are these Chinese crime syndicates more of global operations? They're probably more global operations just run by Chinese nationals. And there may not be much that China can do about it.
Yeah, who knows what the internal status of things is, to what degree do folks look the other way or tolerate, or who knows.
Get a kickback.
Yeah, get a kickback.
Get
Exactly.
a kickback. That's 100% a real possibility.
Yeah.
One of we covered this on the Cyberwire, and one of the statistics that caught my eye was that they were saying that they believe there's upwards of 100,000 people who've been abducted to run these scams.
Jeez.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
I mean,
These are villages,
right.
These
are villages full of people. And we had a story maybe a year ago about a Vietnamese guy who managed to get out of one of these places and by swimming across a river.
Yeah.
And then found somebody that was fortunate. He was fortunate enough to find like a farmer or somebody that,
I
that worked
remember
nearby
that
that he was
story.
able to communicate with,
Yeah.
and was able to get out of there and lead police back to the location. And one of the other things that shocked us, again, as Americans about this, was that the entire control over all these people was maintained with one gun and like 47 bullets or something like that, right? It wasn't a lot by American standards.
Right.
How many bullets do you need? I mean,
all of them.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. When we talk about these stories, I often wonder if there's a stronger word than scam that one could use, because it just doesn't.
Slavery.
Yeah,
this is slavery.
It's slavery.
Is what this
yeah,
is.
Exactly that. Because it's just scam just makes it seem like it's, it's a con man doing a thing. But yeah, it's slavery.
Right.
I mean,
no, this is slavery. This is one of the most reprehensible things one person can do to another.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, on the one hand, it's good that we're seeing some movement here, and we've got international cooperation and recognition to try to, shut these things down. But when you compare the numbers that we have dozens of people being repatriated,
right,
versus
100,000 people still missing.
Yeah, there's a lot of work left to be done. But it's good to see that there's efforts there. All right, we will have links to that story in the show notes. Maria, what do you have for us this week?
Well, there's some interesting stories going around in the corporate sphere that have been popping up on LinkedIn that are AI related that I just find like car crash fascinating, just knowing that this is happening. So there's this story that's been going viral in the last few days that is viral on LinkedIn, so for whatever that's worth, by a gentleman named David, who is the CTO of a company called Vidlock Security Lab. So their whole thing is they're basically a cybersecurity company thinking about cybersecurity in code all the time. But also, I looked at David's LinkedIn, and he's also a cybersecurity guy. Like, that's his background. So just keep in mind that this is a company that is very public about the fact that they're thinking about security all the time. So David was doing a technical interview with a candidate to work at his company. And like a lot of these technical interviews, we've talked about this in the past. This is usually starts remote, a video conference, like a Google Meet chat. And David noticed pretty early on, I guess, in the call, that the candidate he was talking to, his face and neck looked really weird. Like the person was answering his questions, I suppose, competently, but something was off. Like his spidey sense was going off. And thankfully, he took a video of what was going on, because this is one of those things where you really need to see the video because it really does speak for itself. But I'll do my best to convey. Essentially, this person he's talking to, the face looks like a normal, like a European white guy's face, but there's like a chunk of his neck that looks like it's been taken out by the background of like the wall behind him. So there's some weird video artifacting going on. So that's a pretty good indication that something's not right here. But David wrote yeah, go ahead.
I could see this being dismissed as this guy just has a virtual background.
Yes.
And his head keeps popping in and out of that background. It kind of looks like that.
Yeah.
It does. It does. And like that is definitely a real possibility, the plausible deniability of we've all seen these wonky virtual backgrounds. I'm not always sitting on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. I know it's hard to believe, but sometimes it betrays, that I'm actually in my office.
Is that your virtual background, Maria?
I would like you to think that it is, yes.
It's one of them, sure.
Enterprise D?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. So David wrote in this really nice and short post on LinkedIn, this happened to him just 2 days ago from the day of our recording. He wrote, number one, the candidate, all of his answers were clearly from ChatGPT. He wrote, I could smell the GPT-4 bullet point style responses a mile away. And that point number two, he was clearly using software to change his appearance. So not a virtual background. It was actually his face. And the way that he asked the guy to prove that he was who he appeared to be, he simply asked him, can you just wave your hand in front of your face for me? Like just move your hand, which would, normally, if you're using some sort of video filter, that would disrupt the filter. And the guy repeatedly just wouldn't do it. Like it looks like he's pretending to not understand the question, or he waved the hand sort of to the side of his face, but not in front of his face. And the thing that I love the most is hate and love, really. David wrote
Right.
that this was actually the second time in 2 months that he has encountered this exact situation while trying to hire somebody.
Wow.
Which is just nuts. Because again, he's a cybersecurity guy hiring for a cybersecurity company. So you would think people trying to fool somebody with, an AI video filter would maybe choose an easier target, but maybe people have just become so emboldened. They're like, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Now,
So-
I heard a similar story about this about a year ago from somebody I know. They said they had an interview candidate on a Zoom meeting, and this person was, whenever they asked a question, he would, oh, hold on, let me think about that for a second. Hold on. And then he would just
type.
Right. He would just read the question off of the ChatGPT response. And it was obvious he was doing this.
Yeah.
So the funny thing was that the guy I was talking to was like, this was for an entry-level position. He didn't need to answer these questions the way he did, the way ChatGPT did. He just needed to come close with an answer out of his own head. And I would have hired him.
Well, there's even before ChatGPT was a thing, there was the old version of keep your phone line open, and then your friends would sit on Google Docs and sort of type the answer in collaboratively. So if you could buy a few seconds of time, like all your friends would do. I'm not saying I did this or knew anyone who did this.
Right.
It used to be a thing. It's probably still a thing. But there was one comment on David's post that had me thinking about this also. And they said that essentially you could have a whole group of people applying for these remote jobs using the same AI mask. And essentially you could all have these people pretending to be the same fake guy interchangeably. So, sorry, that just sort of stopped me in my tracks. Like, yes, I could see that being absolutely possible.
This reminds me, in the 90s, I want to say the mid-90s, there was a very forgettable film, sci-fi/horror film.
That's probably one of my favorites, I'll bet.
Called The
which
Puppet
one?
Masters.
That was Kiefer Sutherland Donald Sutherland.
Donald Sutherland.
Donald Sutherland. There you go.
Yes.
It was a good movie.
Sure.
May
it
he
was,
rest
Joe.
in peace. Yes.
But one of the plot points was there were these aliens, and they would attach themselves to the humans. They were kind of like stingray shaped,
Right.
and they would attach themselves to the back of your shoulders and the back of your neck. They'd kind of into your spine from the back. So what this reminded me of, there's a scene in the movie where there's like this general, an army general who's reporting in via video. And he's saying, everything's good here. The aliens haven't, they've been unsuccessful. And the people he's talking to says, General, we're going to have to ask you to turn around so that we can see your back, so we can see, the back of your neck. And the signal cuts out because, of course, he's actually been taken by the aliens. So
Yeah. Wave your hand in front of your face. Yes, exactly. Just wave that hand in front of the face. I'm sure you both have encountered the sort of whack-a-mole of identity verification measures that are going on for anything video nowadays for financial reasons or HR. I mean, it just seems like for these scammers, getting past the HR screen is a given now, and people are going all the way through to the interviews, if not beyond that. It's just, it's wild. So I suppose everybody needs to have an on-site day for an interviewee to just make sure that person actually exists.
Right.
Because, clearly it's getting too easy for people to fake it now.
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's fascinating. All right, well, we will have a link to that story in the show notes. Before we get to our next story, let's take a quick break to hear a message from our sponsor. So let's return to our sponsor, ThreatLocker. ThreatLocker is a zero-trust endpoint protection platform that strengthens your infrastructure from the ground up. Where traditional cybersecurity tools require you to create a list of things you don't want to run, ThreatLocker enables you to easily curate an allow list of everything you need in your environment and network, and block everything else by default. With ThreatLocker allow listing and ring fencing, you gain a more secure approach to blocking exploits of known and unknown vulnerabilities. ThreatLocker provides zero-trust control at the kernel level that enables you to allow everything you need and block everything else, including ransomware. The ThreatLocker Zero Trust Endpoint Protection Platform deploys in a learning mode that analyzes the operations of your company using machine learning to assist you in developing your allow list for approved applications, what they can do on the endpoint, what can interact with your data, and even east and west network traffic. We thank ThreatLocker for sponsoring our show. And we are back. Instead of a story this week, I have a special treat for all of us. Joe joined me on a conversation that I had recently with Nati Tal. He is the head of Guardio Labs, which is a cybersecurity company. And they recently did some research about the growing danger of homograph attacks, which is a type of attack we've talked about here before. But they're seeing some escalations of this and some combinations with other attacks. So here's our conversation with Nati Tal. So today we are talking about some research that you all recently did, and this is kind of centering on this idea of homograph attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Can we start off with some high-level stuff here? Can you give us a little of the story of what brought this to your attention?
Well, homograph attacks have been with us for years already. Specifically, in the recent weeks, we've seen those attacks come back to us in a new theme also. Using also the deception of homograph and different kinds of characters used in domain names to look like other domains, but also abusing sponsored search results on Google all at the same time, which makes it quite powerful for the scammers, of course.
Well, for folks who aren't familiar with what a homograph attack actually is, can you describe that for us?
Let's do that with an example.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you get an email or an SMS with a message from a service you usually use, like your email account or your bank, or even some kind of government, let's say IRS or some kind of other division, you need to go to their site and do some important issues like, check your bank account, do some tax reports. You are usually getting those messages in emails or SMSs, and you have a link inside of them. You click on the link and you go to your account or to the website where you can do whatever you need to do. In most cases, of course, those emails and SMSs are legit and you go to the right site. But if you look carefully in the domain name itself, sometimes it looks like the site you're looking for. Let's say bankofamerica.com. It looks like Bank of America, but if you look closely, and sometimes you can't even notice with your eyes, you actually need to test this string in your computer, some of the letters are not exactly those you are used to use. For example, the letter A can be typed in as the A in the American or US language, but it can also be acrylic or some kind of other sign that looks like A, but it's not exactly. And because domain names today are not only using English letters, but they can use any kind of letter on all types of coding and languages and so on, those scammers can sometimes use those switches, moving from the regular A to something that looks like an A, register a new domain that looks almost exactly like the real one, and use this domain for scamming.
And how is this tying into using the Google ad services as well? They're kind of doubling up on their techniques here?
Yeah. Well, first of all, they're using you look at the domain and it looks legit. But if you also get this domain or link to this service by searching for it on Google, you double up on the reputation of this result. Because you're so used to just click on the address bar and typing Bank of America, again, just an example, and you get the first result, which is probably Bank of America, just click on it and move on with what you need to do with the bank. But if you get the search result, which is sponsored, meaning someone paid for Google or for any kind of other company with this kind of service to get to the top of the list, and you're using a domain that looks like Bank of America, this is like flawless. You can fool everybody, including us with 20 years of security experience. It doesn't matter. If the first result is Bank of America and the domain is Bank of America for the human eye, it's flawless. You just click on it and get fooled all around.
Well, my co-host Joe Kerrigan is here in the studio with me, and Joe, this is something we talk about all the time, but it seems as
frequently
though they have taken this to perfection here.
Right. Like well, I mean, I just did some experimental Googling around, if you will, and looked up something that eventually I'm going to need a service for. And when my Google results come back, the very first 1, 2, 3 results are sponsored, which means somebody is paid to have this put in. Then there is a businesses section, and then beyond that there is what looks like regular search results. And then all the way down at the bottom, again, there's another 1, 2, 3 sponsored results, which means that this page has like 6 sponsored results, which is 6 opportunities for a malicious actor to purchase one of these ads and put it into my search results using a domain with one of these homographs in it that you really can't tell is essentially a bogus link.
So, Nati, what's to be done here? I mean, this is a case where you literally can't believe your eyes, right?
Exactly. And again, there are many ways to fool us. And it starts with domains that look alike or subdomains that using, like a subdomain like amazon.com.fake.com again.
Right.
And those kinds of sites are so easy to create. And in some cases, they are even using link shorteners like Bitly or even abusing link shorteners of reputable services like Twitter X or LinkedIn. So you don't even see the actual domain. You just see a short link, which is quite common also for benign services. And you click on it and you get to a spam page. So homographics or any kinds of domain manipulations are so common, and you just can't escape those. And again, when you search for something, mostly, and again, it's like a simple tip: just don't click on sponsored results, because again, if there is a sponsored result, it means someone wanted it to be there. Again, not all are scammers, of course. And if you look for some kind of service, you will probably get a sponsored result which is relevant for you. But make sure you are familiar with this website and you know what you're going to get when you will click on that link. So if you can dismiss sponsored results, just do that, first of all. And second of all, there's no escaping from that. You really need some kind of a security layer that is beyond your eyes, or even sometimes your common knowledge or instinct. Because, and I'm saying that as a security expert with 20 years of experience, it doesn't matter. I also get fooled by those kinds of scams if they are quite good. And unfortunately, they are just getting better and better in their work. So you need some kind of an unbiased security layer in the form of any kind of an extension for your browser that checks everything that you are browsing to on an application for your phone. Everywhere you use the internet, you need some kind of extra protection.
I wonder.
This is what we do here at Guardio, after all.
Yeah. Are there any browser plugins that specifically look for these alternate characters that could, pop up and say, hey, someone's using a non-English lookalike for some letters in this URL. Are you sure you want to go here? Has anyone, to your knowledge, created such a thing?
So I'm a bit biased, but this is exactly what we are doing here at Guardio.
Well, how convenient.
So again, Guardio is exactly again, not only looking for specific abuses of domain names, but also looking on the content of the web page and how you and all million of other users got to this page, and realizing which of those pages is really legit, which is trying to scam you. SMS messages, emails, even instant messages you get from unknown numbers. The scammers will just use any form of communication to reach you, and sometimes even just grab on your own intent, like with Google search. You're searching for something. Let's say, the latest buzzword is DeepSeek, right? Everybody's talking about it and looking for it and trying this new service. And scammers are also realizing that, okay, DeepSeek is a good keyword to grab on sponsored results or create domains that look like DeepSeek. And every time there is a new buzz, scammers are on it immediately.
Right away. So,
and again, you need to check the website itself. You need to check how you get to this website. And again, you need some kind of protection, unbiased protection, because the more those scammers get more creative and using the latest technology like AI or generative AI, it will be harder and harder to realize you're being scammed.
I was thinking about a browser integrated password manager. Dave and I have talked about this before. You might not be able to tell that you're not at bankofamerica.com, but if you have one of those browser integrated password managers, it'll know, hey, that's not the right site because it's not encumbered by the actual graphic. It's looking at the binary text underneath, and that doesn't match. So it won't enter the passwords for your banking site into that site.
Right.
I don't know if that's like rock solid.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing.
Right.
Not bulletproof. Again, it's not bulletproof.
Yeah.
And after all, we are talking about people. And,
right.
and like your title says, hacking humans, this is exactly it. Because if the tactics, most of the tactics by scammers are trying to make you scared about something that is happening and hurry up and enter to your website and check that everything is okay. And because they are using this kind of tactics, you will sometimes won't even notice that your password manager, for your example, is not auto-completing your password in this website.
And then you might just force it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because of all those tactics, and because they're using that on scale, they are attacking with instantly millions of people with the same scenario. Even if 1% of those millions of people will get fooled, just think about how much money, and it's so sad to be scammed like that. And so many people, and all they did was just send one SMS to 1 million accounts, because then nothing and so much money get lost in this scam.
Nati, would you say it's fair to say that you just simply should not click through any sponsored ads or content that come up on your browser anymore?
Well, of course, if you cannot do that, it would be better. But again, if we say that, so are we sure that other links are okay? So maybe we want to click on them as well, and so on. So it's a bit problematic to say don't click anything, just don't use the internet, you will be safe.
Right. Never leave your house.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. We need some kind of certainty when we are using the internet. We need some kind of someone that is looking around our back and making sure everything is okay. And also, after all, if we put ourselves on the other side for a second, the entire economy of the internet is based on advertising at the end of it. It's free because we are the product. And we can just say, okay, no more advertising, no more sponsored results. We will have no internet at the end of it. So we need to live with the risks, but we need to be more aware of those. And again, using other kinds of tools and security layers. There are many kinds, not only browser extensions, not only applications. There are many kinds of security layers that or even the common people need today. Not only, companies and corporates that are using those amazing products, by by cybersecurity companies all around the world, the common people need those kinds of security tactics as well.
Right. Yeah. Never think that you don't have something of value that someone wants. Well, Nati, thank you so much for taking the time for us. We appreciate you joining us and sharing your expertise.
Thank you. It was nice talking. And again, awareness, this is the most important part of it.
All right, interesting stuff. And thank you to Nati Tal for joining us. He and his colleagues there at Guardio are doing some interesting things. And Joe, thank you for joining me and helping me out with that interview.
Well, I'm happy to do it, Dave.
Yeah. All right, well, it is time to move on to our catch of the day.
Dave, our catch of the day comes from Kenneth, who sent this in. It's very typical. It's an invoicing scam, but it's got some interesting aspects for Kenneth uniquely that we're going to talk about later. The subject is unexpected payment attempt with an order number from, it says it's coming from order verification, sent using Zoho Books.
Okay. It goes like this. We've noticed an unexpected payment attempt on your PayPal account, a charge of $699.99 for 0.00789 Bitcoin from an unknown IP address in Texas. To safeguard your account, we have temporarily put this transaction on hold. What you need to know: this payment does not match your usual activity, and we need your confirmation. If you did not authorize this transaction, it is critical to take immediate action. Need assistance? Our resolution center is available 24/7. There's a 800 number.
That's actually, Dave,
Not an 800 number.
it is
No,
an
no, it
808
is not.
number, which
Where-
we'll
where's
get
it?
to in a minute.
Okay. All right. And then it lists some details about the actual transaction. Says your next steps with, again, that phone number to call. It says if you did recognize this purchase, no further action is required. The transaction will be processed as usual. And then it says, stay secure. We will never ask you for your password, PIN, or financial details via email. Always double-check unexpected messages before taking action. Important, this is an automated notification. Replies are not monitored. If anything feels off, contact us right away. Protecting you is our priority. Best regards, PayPal security team.
This is not the PayPal security team. Protecting you is not their priority. Scamming you is.
Spoiler alert. Yes.
Okay.
If you call these guys, they're going to do all that software stuff that they install a bunch of stuff on your computer, and they're going to take all your money.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Typical scam. But what's interesting is Kenneth, he wrote, I think this one is interesting. I'm currently in Hawaii, and they used a Hawaii area code for the number to call.
Huh.
Which is why that's the 808 number. I was like, 808, where is that? Hawaii. And then I read the email from Kenneth. Oh, this is interesting. He says it leads to the bigger question. How are they learning this, or is it random? I don't think it's random. I don't think it's random. Kenneth says he actively interferes with tracking, but he knows it still occurs. There must be some tie between these attackers and data brokers, even though I use a data broker deletion service. He says he didn't look at the PDF. I think Kenneth is onto something here. I think there is something going on behind the scenes. I don't know if they're just buying data from a data broker to make their phishing attempts better, and they're using they're posing as legitimate customers to buy data broker. And here's the question, though. The bigger question is, what part of data brokering is legitimate?
There's so much data brokering.
Right.
I mean, it's absurd how much even if you opt out of everything,
Right.
they are still tracking you.
Tracking all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not PII, Dave. It just uniquely identifies you and ties you to your habits.
That's right.
It's what keeps marketing departments working around the world, sadly.
Right.
They love this stuff. Yep.
I think he's onto something. Maybe they're buying the data. Maybe somebody has breached a data broker and they're just exfiltrating the data. I don't think it's like a data broker being nefarious here. I don't think that's the case. I think they're just using a data broker for their intended purposes, but just misusing them.
The other thing that strikes me about this is you were saying, because I said, here's an 800 number, and you corrected me and said it's not an 800 number.
Right.
But like, the whole existence of 800 numbers is obsolete, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there's no such thing as long distance anymore.
Right.
So you don't need to have a toll-free number. That's a relic from landlines.
Yes.
I would hazard to say a lot of younger kids probably don't even know how an 800 number works. Maybe they've heard of it, but they've never used one.
I think to those of us who remember it sort of is the unofficial, this is a business phone number,
Right.
but
Right.
I've been seeing them going away across the board anyway. I'm getting a lot of phone messages that are, to a direct area code. I don't almost ever see an 800 or 866
Yeah.
or anything like that
Yeah.
anymore.
I don't see it either.
No, I don't either. I'd never thought to think about it, but I guess that's just something that's fading away into the mists of time.
Like so much of our childhood.
That's right. That's right.
One final note here from Kenneth. Thanks for the informative and entertaining show every week. Keep Maria. I find her better than most of the interviews.
Well, there you go,
So,
Maria.
Thanks.
All right, you can come back next week.
All right. Since he says so, thanks, Kenneth. I'll
Because
stick around.
you was really on the edge there, but Kenneth put us over the top.
Right.
So you can come back. You can come back this week. Why don't we make a new rule? Every week, if someone writes in and says to keep Maria, then she can come back the next week.
Right.
Otherwise, what do you think about that?
Otherwise, Maria will probably still be on the show next week.
Yeah,
Because-
count on it.
Last week, I was sitting here. I knew Maria was going to be. Oh, how was the space conference, Maria? I wanted to ask you about that.
It was great. Very, very, very rewarding and exhausting. But Dave, doing these events, it's
Yeah,
tiring.
yeah.
But
Dave and I
it
have
was-
a question.
Mm.
Are astronauts cooler than we are?
Yes. No hesitation. Yes.
That was my
Right.
my guess last week.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
They're even cooler than you can possibly imagine.
yeah. I just think like the advantage Maria now has at cocktail parties because she can just say, well, last week I was chatting with an astronaut and
Yep.
right?
Yep. I have a running count of the number that I've met and interviewed, and it's like well over a dozen now. It's like, yeah, are
Wow.
you kidding me?
All right.
great.
That's very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
You ever met Mike Collins?
I have not. No. Yeah. Is he still
Apollo
alive?
11. The
Yeah.
guy in
Is
the
he still
capsule.
alive?
think so. I don't know.
I thought Buzz was the last one.
No,
Yeah,
Buzz
I
passed
don't-
away.
No, Buzz is very much
I'm
alive.
sorry. I'm sorry.
I
You're
saw
right.
Buzz on a TV commercial last
Right, no,
week.
Buzz,
so-
I'm
He's
sorry. I'm
alive.
thinking of Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong passed away.
yeah, Neil's gone, but
Neil-
Buzz
Neil
is still
died.
around.
Yeah, I was gonna
As
say Michael Collins.
cantankerous as ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's in his 90s now. I met Charlie
He punched
Duke,
somebody
though.
in the face who said that he didn't land on the moon.
Yes, he did. Yes.
Yeah.
My hero.
Yeah. My response was, if you're going to come at somebody who landed on the moon, count on the fact that that person is more of a badass than you are.
That is a fact.
Right?
That is a fact.
And of course, we want to thank this week's sponsor, ThreatLocker. Go to threatlocker.com/HH and check out their Zero Trust Endpoint Protection Platform. That's the words threat and locker with no space.com/HH, where you can request a demo and neutralize the threat of malware running on your devices. All right, we are sidetracked here, so I'm going to get us back on track and thank everybody for listening. That is Hacking Humans, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your favorite podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to hackinghumans@n2k.com. This episode is produced by Liz Stokes. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. We're mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. I'm Dave Bittner.
I'm Joe Kerrigan.
And I'm Maria Varmazis.
Thanks for listening.